Hi everyone, I'm Anne Fortin from University of Quebec in Montreal, and I'll be discussing this paper. The paper contrasts medium and large enterprises on the awareness and use of IT frameworks, benefits and challenges of implementing IT governance, and on structured processes and relational mechanisms that are used. The constant comparisons allows a better understanding of the differences between medium and large organizations on these issues, and the significance of risk management in addition to IT strategic alignment in influencing the decision to adopt IT governance, and as an important governance, IT governance benefit is an interesting contribution of the study. The study is mainly descriptive in nature, so my comments will be on the presentation of results and include observations on results that I find interesting or in addition to those mentioned by the authors. They use the resource-based view as a theoretical framework, and I find it pertinent since IT governance aims to align IT with business objectives in such a manner that IT systems complement other enterprises' resources, thereby enhancing the competitivity of the enterprise. And the authors expect differences between large and smaller organizations, since smaller entities have less resources. In terms of their research question, I think that it should be reformulated. In research question 1, they talk about the extent of awareness, but they should also talk about the extent of awareness and implementation, because they're really asking questions on implementation too. In terms of research question 2, it's the only one that talks about the fact that they are looking at differences between smaller and larger organizations, but that applies to all questions because they do that across the paper for all their questions. And in terms of the research question 3, which is concerns entities with an IT governance policy, they mention in that question that structure, processes, etc. will be looked at, but in fact it's not only for those types of organization with a policy, but to all respondents who answered the questions. So I think the 4 questions should be reformulated. In terms of the sample, they don't provide the range for MEs, and also they have 37% respondents that are in other positions than the one they present. So in the text they mentioned that it is IT and senior management personnel. However, to the extent that the persons are not senior enough, this might explain the low responses on some of these questions, like 8.5% don't know if the organization has an IT governance policy. Also only 62% answered questions on structure processes, and also 67% answered the question on ISO IEC 30500 principal application. I find it interesting that there's still, even in medium organization, about 20% of CIOs, compared with 30% in large organizations. So there's still several CIOs in medium organizations, and 84% of their organization are headquartered in Australia, so they should be careful in their conclusion not to mention that it is a portrait of Australian organizations, because there are also other organizations in the sample. I find it interesting that COBIT has the IS awareness in both MEs and LOs. However, I wonder, did they question on only COBIT 4.1, COBIT 5, or both? So it's not clear. I find it interesting also that there is a higher awareness for risk IT for medium enterprises compared to large organizations. And I find it puzzling that causal awareness is low overall. In terms of the difference, they have significant differences between large organization and medium organization for the total of awareness and implementation category. And this has probably come from greater implementation in large organization for both of these frameworks. However, it's not clear in the text because they use awareness, and then awareness and implementation, and then the total. And when they talk in the texts, we never know if they talk about the total or if they talk about their column awareness and implementation. So their column awareness and implementation, they should rename it only implementation because implementation includes awareness, and then their total would be awareness and implementation, and then when we read the text, it would be clearer. I find it interesting that the two views held by the highest percentage of respondents refer to IT alignment and IT value delivery. However, IT value delivery was not a main benefit pushing enterprises to adopt an IT governance policy. It was mainly IT alignment and risk considerations. And also for this question, we don't know how many respondents they have. They're talking about in their results. Is it 143? We don't know. In terms of corporate governance IT policy, I find that there are several problems with Table 4. A number of respondents from MEs and LOs are not indicated for respondent involvement in developing an IT governance policy, and questions for those that have a policy. If we look at their percentages for medium enterprises, those having and developing a policy, there is 51.23%, and there have 43 respondents for medium enterprises, so we would expect 22 enterprises. For large organization, we would expect 67. This would give 89, and they have 81. And in these 81, we don't know how many medium enterprises and how many large enterprises. So it's difficult to interpret the percentages. And also it's similar for the section on those who have a policy. We would expect 72, we have 66. And also in the table, those percentages for large organizations don't add up to 100, they add up to 96%, and those for communication of CGT policy add up to 53%. So there's probably some missing data, but they should at least indicate it at the bottom of the table. In terms of percentages, for in the section related to question 3, CGT policy, CIOs in large organizations are more involved than MEs in terms of having the responsibility for updating and implementing the policy. And we see CIOs and boards that are more involved in medium enterprises, and this is an interesting result. In page 22, the authors indicate performance measurement being more important for MEs than for LOs, and the reverse was true for value delivery. I don't agree with that, since the percentages are similar for MEs and LOs. Also, they indicate that for MEs, from the table we can see that performance management is slightly more important than resource management and value delivery for MEs. And for large organizations, there is similar importance for performance management, resource management, and value delivery. So I disagree with their conclusion that resource management is relatively uninfluential, since it has similar importance to other elements for both MEs and LOs. Also, they have only 59 items for MEs and 124 for LOs. So how many responded to the question? Because they asked 3 highest influence in the development of a CGIT policy. So we would expect at least 3 times the number of respondents they had. So did some provide less than 2? Did some did not answer? So we don't know. Again, for the question on the benefits, we don't know how many MEs and how many LOs. For the question on challenges associated with CGIT policy, again, we don't know how many MEs and LOs, how many respondents. We suppose that it's the same as the same number of respondents as for benefits. And in Table 7, ME's strategic alignment and risk management items are the same. Is there a typo here? And then comments for LOs could indicate that risk management was less an implementation challenge than an influence to adopt the CGIT policy. And strategic alignment and risk management were raised proportionately more by MEs than LOs. I disagree for strategic alignments because LOs raised it 33% and MEs 23.7%. In the question on application of ISO IEC 30500 principle, again, we don't know how many MEs and LOs. And in Table 8, percentages are all expressed in terms of the basis of 143 respondents when there are 94 respondents, so it's confusing. And another table, Table 6, the percentages seem to be expressed on the basis of the number of respondents. Also, in terms of resolve, I find it interesting that Principle 4, IT is fit for purpose in supporting the organization. It's both the lowest and highest percentage agreement for medium organizations. So it's either IT is fit or is not fit, and there's more yes or no answer for MEs than for LOs. There were more neutral answers for LOs. For the question on structure, processes, mechanisms, again, there's 90 respondents. How many MEs and LOs, we don't know. On what basis are presented the percentages? On Table 9, we don't know. Could respondents add any items, or were they only provided a list, a closed list? And they indicate that the fourth most common structural mechanism is job specification, but it's not the case in terms of percentages. It's CIOs has a role on the board. And I find it interesting that for MEs, you have a greater occurrences that CIO has a role on the board, and they have IT strategy committees, even more than LOs, while we would expect the reverse. Training, it would be interesting to have the time spent on training, and then it could be interesting, but in another study, to look at the difference in terms of structure, processes, and relational mechanisms according to IT dependencies, since it explains part of the differences in structures, mechanisms, and processes. The discussion is interesting and appropriate, but at a few places, the authors should be more careful. For example, on page 31, they say enhance awareness and they should say enhance awareness and implementation of project management tools, rather than not only awareness as in the paper. In terms of limitation, it's not a random sample. There is self-selection bias, so we don't know what the representativeness of the sample is, and it's a mixed composition, so we have to be careful in terms of not concluding only for Australian organizations. And in terms of future research, they could relate the frameworks used to the adopted structures, processes, etc., and to achievement of the benefits for both large and smaller organizations, and they could relate the development of a IT governance policy with IT dependence.